The Victoria and Albert Museum, London, is the world's largest museum of decorative arts and design, housing a permanent collection of over 4.5 million objects. It was founded in 1852 and named after Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. The V&amp is located in the Brompton district of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, in an area that has become known as Albertopolis because of its association with Prince Albert, the Albert Memorial and the major cultural institutions with which he was associated. These include the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum and the Royal Albert Hall. The museum is a non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. Like other national British museums, entrance to the museum has been free since 2001. The V&amp covers 12.5 acres and 145 galleries. Its collection spans 5,000 years of art, from ancient times to the present day, from the cultures of Europe, North America, Asia and North Africa. The holdings of ceramics, glass, textiles, costumes, silver, ironwork, jewelry, furniture, medieval objects, sculpture, prints and printmaking, drawings and photographs are among the largest and most comprehensive in the world. The museum owns the world's largest collection of post-classical sculpture, with the holdings of Italian Renaissance items being the largest outside Italy. The departments of Asia include art from South Asia, China, Japan, Korea and the Islamic world. The East Asian collections are among the best in Europe, with particular strengths in ceramics and metalwork, while the Islamic collection is amongst the largest in the Western world. Overall, it is one of the largest museums in the world. Since 2001, the museum has embarked on a major £150 million renovation program, which has seen a major overhaul of the departments, including the introduction of newer galleries, gardens, shops and visitor facilities. New 17th and 18th century European galleries were opened on the 9th of December 2015. These restored the original Aston Webb interiors and will host the European collections 1600 to 1815. History. Foundation. The V&amp has its origins in the Great Exhibition of 1851, with which Henry Cole, the museum's first director, was involved in planning. Initially it was known as the Museum of Manufactures, first opening in May 1852 at Marlborough House, but by September had been transferred to Somerset House. At this stage the collections covered both applied art and science. Several of the exhibits from the exhibition were purchased to form the nucleus of the collection. By February 1854 discussions were underway to transfer the museum to the current site and it was renamed South Kensington Museum. In 1855 the German architect Gottfried Semper, at the request of Cole, produced a design for the museum, but it was rejected by the Board of Trade as too expensive. The site was occupied by Brompton Park House. This was extended, including the first refreshment rooms opened in 1857, the museum being the first in the world to provide such a facility. The official opening by Queen Victoria was on the 22nd of June 1857. In the following year, late-night openings were introduced, made possible by the use of gas lighting. This was to enable, in the words of Cole, to ascertain practically what hours are most convenient to the working classes. This was linked to the use of the collections of both applied art and science as educational resources to help boost productive industry. In these early years the practical use of the collection was very much emphasized, as opposed to that of high art at the National Gallery and scholarship at the British Museum. George Wallace, the first keeper of fine art collection, passionately promoted the idea of wide art education through the museum collections. This led to the transfer to the Museum of the School of Design that had been founded in 1837 at Somerset House. After the transfer, it was referred to as the Art School or Art Training School, later to become the Royal College of Art, which finally achieved full independence in 1949. For the 1860s to the 1880s, the scientific collections had been moved from the main museum site to various improvised galleries to the west of Exhibition Road. In 1893, the Science Museum had effectively come into existence when a separate director was appointed. The laying of the foundation stone of the Aston Webb building on the 17th of May 1899 was the last official public appearance by Queen Victoria. It was during this ceremony that the change of name from the South Kensington Museum to the Victoria and Albert Museum was made public. London Gazette of the time ended, "I trust that it will remain for ages a monument of discerning liberality and a source of refinement and progress." The exhibition, which the museum organized to celebrate the centennial of the 1899 renaming, A Grand Design, first toured in North America from 1997, returning to London in 1999. To accompany and support the exhibition, the museum published a book, Grand Design, which it has made available for reading online on its website. The opening ceremony for the Aston Webb building by King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra took place on the 26th of June 1909. In 1914, the construction commenced of the Science Museum, signaling the final split of the science and art collections. Since then, the museum has maintained its role of one of the world's greatest decorative arts collections. In 1939, on the outbreak of World War II, most of the collection was sent to a quarry in Wiltshire, to Montacute House in Somerset, or to a tunnel near Aldwych Tube Station, with larger items remaining in situ, sandbagged and bricked in. Between 1941 and 1944, some galleries were used as a school for children evacuated from Gibraltar. The South Court became a canteen, first for the Royal Air Force and later for bomb damage repair squads. Before the return of the collections after the war, the Britain Can Make It exhibition was held between September and November 1946, attracting nearly 1.5 million visitors. This was organized by the Council of Industrial Design, established by the British government in 1944, to promote by all practicable means the improvement of design in the products of British industry. The success of this exhibition led to the planning of the Festival of Britain. By 1948, most of the collections had been returned to the museum. In July 1973, as part of its outreach program to young people, the V&amp became the first museum in Britain to present a rock concert. The V&amp presented a combined concert lecture by British progressive folk rock band Griffin, who explored the lineage of medieval music and instrumentation and related how those contributed to contemporary music 500 years later. This innovative approach to bringing young people to museums was a hallmark of the directorship of Roy Strong and was subsequently emulated by some other British museums. In the 1980s, Sir Roy Strong renamed the museum as the Victoria and Albert Museum, the National Museum of Art and Design. Strong's successor Elizabeth Esteve-Cole oversaw a turbulent period for the institution in which the museum's curatorial departments were restructured, leading to public criticism from some staff. Esteve-Cole's attempt to make the V&amp more accessible included a criticized market marketing campaign emphasizing the café of the collection. In 2001, Future Plan was launched, which involves redesigning all the galleries and public facilities in the museum that have yet to be remodeled. This is to ensure that the exhibits are better displayed, more information is available, and the museum meets modern expectations for museum facilities. It should take about 10 years to complete the work. The museum also runs the Museum of Childhood at Bethnal Green and used to run the Theatre Museum in Covent Garden and Apsley House. The Theatre Museum is now closed and the V&amp theatre collections are now displayed within the South Kensington building. Partnerships. The V&amp has no museums or galleries of its own outside London. Instead, it works with a small number of partner organisations in Sheffield, Dundee and Blackpool to provide a regional presence. The V&amp is in discussion with the University of Dundee, University of Albert.The, Dundee City Council and the Scottish Government with a view to opening a new £43 million gallery in Dundee that would use the V&amp brand, although it would be funded through and operated independently. As of 2015, with costs estimated at £76 million, it is the most expensive gallery project ever undertaken in Scotland. The V&amp Dundee will be on the city's waterfront and is intended to focus on fashion, architecture, product design, graphic arts and photography. It is planned that it could open within 5 years. Dundee City Council is expected to pay a major part of the running costs. The V&amp is not contributing financially, but will be providing expertise, loans and exhibitions. Plans for a new gallery in Blackpool are also under consideration. This follows earlier plans to move the theatre collection to a new £60 million museum in Blackpool, which failed due to lack of funding. The V&amp exhibits twice a year at the Millennium Galleries in partnership with Museums Sheffield. The V&amp is one of 17 museums across Europe and the Mediterranean participating in a project called Discover Islamic Art, developed by the Brussels-based consortium Museum with No Frontiers. This online virtual museum brings together more than 1,200 works of Islamic art and architecture into a single database. Victoria and Albert museums came second to the London's top-paid exhibitions in 2015 with the record-breaking Alexander McQueen show. Architecture of the museum. Victorian period. The Victorian parts of the building have a complex history, with piecemeal additions by different architects. Founded in May 1852, it was not until 1857 that the museum moved to the present site. This area of London was known as Brompton but had been renamed South Kensington. The land was occupied by Brompton Park House, which was extended, most notably by the Brompton boilers, which were starkly utilitarian iron galleries with a temporary look and were later dismantled and used to build the V&amp, a museum of childhood. The first building to be erected that still forms part of the museum was the Sheepshanks Gallery in 1857 on the eastern side of the garden. Its architect was civil engineer Captain Francis Fulk, Royal Engineers, who was appointed by Cole. The next major expansions were designed by the same architect. The Turner and Vernon Galleries, built 1858-9 to house the eponymous collections, are now used as the Picture Galleries and Tapestry Gallery, respectively. The North and South Courts were then built, both of which opened by June 1862. They now formed the galleries for temporary exhibitions and are directly behind the Sheepshanks Gallery. On the very northern edge of the site is situated the Secretariat Wing, also built in 1862. This houses the offices and boardroom etc., and is not open to the public. An ambitious scheme of decoration was developed for these new areas. A series of mosaic figures depicting famous European artists of the medieval and Renaissance period. These have now been removed to other areas of the museum. Also started were a series of frescoes by Lord Leighton, Industrial Arts as Applied to War 1878 to 1880, and Industrial Arts Applied to Peace, which was started but never finished. To the east of this were additional galleries, the decoration of which was the work of another designer, Owen Jones. These were the Oriental Courts, completed in 1863. None of this decoration survives. Part of these galleries became the New Galleries covering the 19th century, opened in December 2006. The last work by Folk was the design for the range of buildings on the north and west sides of the garden. This includes the refreshment rooms, reinstated as the Museum Café in 2006, with the Silver Gallery above. The top floor has a splendid lecture theatre, although this is seldom open to the general public. The ceramic staircase in the northwest corner of this range of buildings was designed by F.W. Moody and has architectural details of molded and colored pottery. All the work on the North Range was designed and built in 1864 to 69. The style adopted for this part of the museum was Italian Renaissance. Much use was made of terracotta, brick and mosaic. This north facade was intended as the main entrance to the museum, with its bronze doors designed by James Gamble and V&amp. Reuben Tunro, having 6 panels depicting Humphrey Davy, Isaac Newton, James Watt, Bramante, Michelangelo, Titian, thus representing the range of the museum's collections. Godfrey Sykes also designed the terracotta embellishments and the mosaic in the pediment of the north facade, commemorating the Great Exhibition, the profits from which helped to fund the museum. This is flanked by terracotta statue groups by Percival Ball. This building replaced Brompton Park House, which could then be demolished to make way for the South Range. The interiors of the 3 refreshment rooms were assigned to different designers. The Green Dining Room 1866 to 68 was the work of Philip Webb and William Morris, and displays Elizabethan influences. The lower part of the walls are panelled inward with a band of paintings depicting fruit and the occasional figure, with moulded plaster foliage on the main part of the wall and a plaster frieze around the decorated ceiling and stained glass windows by Edward Burne-Jones. The centre refreshment room 1865 to 77 was designed in a Renaissance style by James Gamble. The walls and even the Ionic columns are covered in decorative and moulded ceramic tile. The ceiling consists of elaborate designs on enamelled metal sheets and matching stained glass windows. The marble fireplace was designed and sculpted by Alfred Stevens and was removed from Dorchester House prior to that building's demolition in 1929. The Grill Room 1876 to 81 was designed by Sir Edward Poynter. The lower part of the walls consist of blue and white tiles with various figures and foliage enclosed by wood paneling. Above there are large tiled scenes with figures depicting the 4 seasons and the 12 months. These were painted by ladies from the art school, then based in the museum. The windows are also stained glass. There is an elaborate cast iron grille still in place. With the death of Captain Francis Folk, Royal Engineers, the next architect to work at the museum was Colonel Henry Young Darracott Scott, also of the Royal Engineers. He designed to the northwest of the garden the 5-story School for Naval Architects, now the Henry Cole Wing, in 1867 to 72. Scott's assistant J. F.W. Wild designed the impressive staircase that rises the full height of the building. Made from Cadby stone, the steps are 7 feet in length. The balustrades and columns are Portland stone. It is now used to jointly house the prints and architectural drawings of the V&amp and Royal Institute of British Architects, and the Sackler Centre for Arts Education, which opened in 2008. Continuing the style of the earlier buildings, various designers were responsible for the decoration. The terracotta embellishments were again the work of Godfrey Sykes, although S-graffito was used to decorate the east side of the building designed by F.W. Moody. A final embellishment were the wrought iron gates made as late as 1885, designed by Starkey Gardner. These lead to a passage through the building. Scott also designed the 2 cast courts 1870–73 to the southeast of the garden. These vast spaces have ceilings 70 feet in height to accommodate the plaster casts of parts of famous buildings, including Trajan's Column. The final part of the museum designed by Scott was the art library and what is now the sculpture gallery on the south side of the garden. Built 1877–83, the exterior mosaic panels in the parapet were designed by Reuben Tanro, who also designed the plaster work in the library. Sir John Taylor designed the bookshelves and cases. Also, this was the first part of the museum to have electric lighting. This completed the northern half of the site, creating a quadrangle with the garden at its center, but left the museum without a proper facade. In 1890, the government launched a competition to design new buildings for the museum, with architect Alfred Waterhouse as one of the judges. This would give the museum a new imposing front entrance. Edwardian period. The main facade, built from red brick and Portland stone, stretches 720 feet along Cromwell Gardens and was designed by Aston Webb after winning a competition in 1891 to extend the museum. Construction took place between 1899 and 1909. Stylistically, it is a strange hybrid. Although much of the detail belongs to the Renaissance, there are medieval influences at work. The main entrance, consisting of a series of shallow arches supported by slender columns and niches with twin doors separated by pier, is Romanesque in form but classical in detail. Likewise, the tower above the main entrance has an open-work crown surmounted by a statue of Fame, a feature of late Gothic architecture and a feature common in Scotland, but the detail is classical. The main windows to the galleries are also mullioned and transomed, again a Gothic feature. The top row of windows are interspersed with statues of many of the British artists whose work is displayed in the museum. Prince Albert appears within the main arch above the twin entrances, Queen Victoria above the frame around the arches and entrance, sculpted by Alfred Drury. These facades surround 4 levels of galleries. Other areas designed by Webb include the entrance hall and rotunda, the east and west halls, the areas occupied by the shop and Asian galleries, as well as the costume gallery. The interior makes much use of marble in the entrance hall and flanking staircases, although the galleries as originally designed were white with restrained classical detail and moldings, very much in contrast to the elaborate decoration of the Victorian galleries, although much of this decoration was removed in the early 20th century. Post-war period, the museum survived the Second World War with only minor bomb damage. The worst loss was the Victorian stained glass on the ceramic staircase, which was blown in when bombs fell nearby. Pockmarks still visible on the facade of the museum were caused by fragments from the bombs. In the immediate post-war years, there was little money available for other than essential repairs. The 1950s and early 1960s saw little in the way of building work. The first major work was the creation of new storage space for books in the art library in 1966 and 1967. This involved flooring over Aston Webb's main hall to form the book stacks, with a new medieval gallery on the ground floor. Then the lower ground floor galleries in the southwest part of the museum were redesigned, opening in 1978 to form the new galleries covering continental art 1600 to 1800. In 1974 the museum had acquired what is now the Henry Cole Wing from the Royal College of Science. To adapt the building as galleries, all the Victorian interiors except for the staircase were recast during the remodeling. To link this to the rest of the museum, a new entrance building was constructed on the site of the former boiler house, the intended site of the spiral, between 1978 and 1982. This building is of concrete and very functional, the only embellishment being the iron gates by Christopher Hay and Douglas Coyne of the Royal College of Art. These are set in the columned screen wall designed by Aston Webb that forms the facade. Recent years, a few galleries were redesigned in the 1990s, including the Indian, Japanese, Chinese ironwork, the main glass galleries and the main silverware gallery, which was further enhanced in 2002 when some of the Victorian decoration was recreated. This included 2 of the 10 columns having the ceramic decoration replaced and the elaborate painted designs restored on the ceiling. As part of the 2006 renovation, the mosaic floors in the sculpture gallery were restored. Most of the Victorian floors were covered in linoleum after the Second World War. After the success of the British galleries, opened in 2001, it was decided to embark on a major redesign of all the galleries in the museum. This is known as Future Plan, and was created in consultation with the exhibition designers and master planners Metaphor. The plan is expected to take about 10 years and was started in 2002. To date, several galleries have been redesigned, notably, in 2002, the main Silver Gallery, Contemporary, in 2003, Photography, the main entrance, the Painting Galleries, in 2004, the tunnel to the subway leading to South Kensington Tube Station, new signage throughout the museum, architecture, V&amp, and Reba reading rooms and stores, metalware, members room, contemporary glass. The Gilbert Bayes Sculpture Gallery, in 2005, portrait, miniatures, prints and drawings, displays in room 117. The Garden, Sacred Silver and Stained Glass, in 2006, Central Hall Shop, Islamic Middle East, the New Cafe, Sculpture Galleries. Several designers and architects have been involved in this work. Eva Dirichner designed the enhancements to the main entrance and rotunda, the new shop, the tunnel and the sculpture galleries. Gareth Hoskins was responsible for contemporary and architecture, Softroom, Islamic Middle East and the members room. McInnes McKnight Architects were responsible for the new cafe and designed the new medieval and Renaissance galleries, which opened in 2009. In September 2004, the museum's Board of Trustees voted to abandon a proposed extension, designed by Daniel Libeskind with Cecil Barman, after failing to receive funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund. In 2011, the V&amp announced that London-based Practice Alley had won an international competition to construct a gallery beneath a new entrance courtyard on Exhibition Road. Planning for the scheme was granted in 2012. The Central Garden was redesigned by Kim Wilkie and opened as the John Medeski Garden on 5 July 2005. The design is a subtle blend of the traditional and modern. The layout is formal. There is an elliptical water feature lined in stone with steps around the edge which may be drained to use the area for receptions, gatherings, or exhibition purposes. This is in front of the bronze doors leading to the refreshment rooms. A central path flanked by lawns leads to the sculpture gallery. The north East and west sides have herbaceous borders along the museum walls with paths in front which continues along the south facade. In the two corners, by the north facade, there is planted an American sweet gum tree. The southern, eastern and western edges of the lawns have glass planters which contain orange and lemon trees in summer. These are replaced by bay trees in winter. At night, both the planters and water feature may be illuminated, and the surrounding facades lit to reveal details normally in shadow. Especially noticeable are the mosaics in the loggia of the north facade. In summer, a cafe is set up in the southwest corner. The garden is also used for temporary exhibits of sculpture. For example, a sculpture by Jeff Koons was shown in 2006. It has also played host to the museum's annual Contemporary Design Showcase. The V&amp, a village fete since 2005.